Good afternoon, my name is Ola Atamanova and I want to thank everybody who joins us in Ukraine Media Center Ukraine Forum. We continue our operation today. It's day 502 of the full-scale invasion of our homeland by Russian aggressor, and now we will be talking about the presentation of the report on the intentions and perspectives of internally displaced persons in Ukraine since the beginning of the war in 2014, and then since the beginning of the full-scale invasion. We know that many of our people have become internally displaced persons or refugees, forced refugees. So now the situation is being studied. It was studied by the speaker we want to introduce to you is the representative of the UNHCR in Ukraine, Ms. Karolina Lindholm. Good afternoon, Ms. Karolina.
Pani Karolina.
Ms. Karolina, I know that you've made this report after questioning the people, so can you please tell us in the beginning about the methods you were using while preparing this report, and then we will be talking about the summaries, the findings, and the main results of this report. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So it's actually the fourth edition of the survey or study that UNHCR is doing among Ukrainians who have fled abroad and sought refuge, sought protection from the full-scale invasion and ongoing war. And for internally displaced, it's the second round, the second wave of surveys. And the way it's done is that we identify what we say a representative sample of people from men, women, of different age groups, different backgrounds, and different areas of origin for inside Ukraine, and then contact them to ask questions based on a standard questionnaire, which is also almost identical, the one used for internally displaced and the one used for refugees from Ukraine, in order to get a representative perspective and views on how they see the situation and how they see and think about return to Ukraine and their areas of origin.
So, Ms. Karolina, what are the findings of the study? What is the percentage of those who were forced to leave their homes plan to come back to their homes, and what are the main reasons that create obstacles for their return? Thank you.
So the findings in these 2 waves of surveys among internally displaced and 4 waves of surveys among refugees from Ukraine, the findings have remained stable over time, I would say. The absolute majority of both the refugees and the IDPs are hoping, longing to return to their homes in Ukraine, the homes they fled from. And over time, this has been quite stable, as I said. And the main factor which is preventing them from returning right now is safety and security. Among refugees from Ukraine, 90% give importance and highlight safety and security as the main impediment or obstacle to returning now, and 95% of the internally displaced raise safety and security as the main obstacle. And then we ask, so what would be, apart from safety and security, what are other factors that are making it difficult for you to return now, or that would enable you to return as you hope to do? And there, both those who are refugees and those who are internally displaced highlight access to basic services like water, electricity. These are important. Access to job opportunities, livelihoods. Access to housing, somewhere to live, because as we know, many have had their houses or apartments destroyed or damaged because of the hostilities. And the fourth factor they highlight is access to education services for their children.
So if we understand it correctly, with time, the percentage of those who plan to come back to Ukraine has not changed.
No, it's remained pretty stable. You know, there has been some reduction, but very minor, because again, over time, it's remained stable. And I think this really shows how strong the will, the hope, and the intentions to return is among both those who fled abroad and those who have fled within the country. And therefore, how important it is for all of us who contribute to programs that help restore access to basic services, or programs that help repair damaged houses or apartments, or support other accommodation options, or programs that support increasing job opportunities. These are really key. I mean, for humanitarian actors, there is little we can do about security situation, but we can contribute to creating the other enabling factors.
Пані Кароліно,
Ms. Karolina, obviously such studies are about to be laid as fundamental for the humanitarian support further on, which is coming to Ukraine. To what extent those programs will be adjusted according to this report, and to what extent UNHCR will get involved in such programs? What is your priority in this regard? Thank you.
So we use the findings from these studies, first of all, to highlight what the views, perspectives, and voices of the Ukrainians who have been forced to flee are, because that's key, that it's their perspectives, their voices, and their needs and concerns that are at the center of our planning. Secondly, we use this to highlight the need for continued international support for Ukraine's programs to rebuild, recover, restore houses, apartments, and social infrastructure that has been destroyed. We also use it to highlight the need for international support to expand job opportunities for economic revival and livelihoods. We also use it to highlight the need to support basic services to function again: electricity, water, and social services, education services, health services, which is key. So using this to mobilize continued support for the recovery of Ukraine is key, because this is what will help people maintain their hope in returning and be able to return. And UNHCR, we contribute to some of these programs. For example, house repairs. Since the start of the full-scale invasion, we have, through our programs, repaired more than 13,000 houses, changed new roofs, windows, doors, fixed holes in the walls so that displaced people can return and move back into their own homes. We have also a small pilot with Ukrainian-made prefabricated houses that we are implementing in Kyivska and Chernivska regions. And we also, through our legal programs, provide free legal aid to people who have been forced to flee on how to recover identity documents and property documents, because that's also key to recovery and being able to return. So we contribute to this, but it's a collective effort with many different actors, and again, under the strong leadership of the government of Ukraine and its regional and local authorities and communities.
Пані Кароліно, базуючись на цьому
Ms. Karolina, based on this research, can we say what are the regions of our country that are more attractive for return of our people? Thank you.
So in the survey, people highlight especially Kyivska region, Chernivska region, Kharkivska, Mykolaiivska region. These are some of those that are coming up in our surveys as the most, where you see the highest intentions of people to return in the near future.
Шановні колеги,
Dear colleagues, if we have any questions on the floor, let's proceed to them. Good afternoon, Nadia Yurchenko, Ukraine Forum. I have two questions. First, can you please tell us what was the purpose of this research? The findings are within some reasons, so no one is going to come back to the places where there is no electricity, no jobs, and no security. And another question is, you're saying that the majority wants to come back to their homes. However, the sociologists, they highlight another trend. The more the people stay away from their homes, they get rooted there and they lose that intention to come back. Did you take that factor into account too? Thank you.
Thank you. So the purpose of the survey is to hear directly from people who have been internally displaced or fled abroad as refugees, what their intentions, what their fears, concerns, plans, intentions are when it comes to return. So this can be at the center of our planning, their views and voices. And then to use this to advocate for more international support to Ukraine's recovery in the area of basic services, livelihoods, housing, education, which are key factors that people raise. On your question that the majority, it's true that often with time, we see maybe a reduction in plans to return. But that's why it's interesting that we've now been doing 4 rounds of these intention surveys among refugees over the past year. And the hope, the desire and intention to return is still quite stable. It has not significantly dropped. What we also see in the survey is that quite a large number of those abroad and those about 37% of refugees and about 50% of internally displaced have at least once gone back to their former home to meet with their families, communities, check on their property. And UNHCR also advocates with countries hosting Ukrainians to allow this flexibility to be able to go back and visit and check on your place, meet with your community, family members, friends, because this helps maintain family links and community links, which makes it then easier to return when you feel that it's safe to do so. Because return should be voluntary. It should not be pressured or forced, especially when an international armed conflict is still very much ongoing.
прошу. У нас є ще питання.
We have more questions on the floor. Katerina Galko, TV channel Espresso. What is the exact number of the support programs for Ukrainians, or is it all limited to the ones you've mentioned? And what are the new support programs that we should expect based on the results of your survey? Thank you.
So the programs that I mentioned on housing repairs and legal aid are just 2 examples of UNHCR's programs. We also have a big cash assistance program. For example, last year in 22, we provided multi-purpose cash assistance to around 1 million Ukrainians who were war affected and displaced in the amount of more than $250 million. This year, we also have that multi-purpose cash program ongoing. So these are just examples. UNHCR works within an interagency humanitarian response plan that is aiming to reach more than 11 million Ukrainians this year with different humanitarian support. The budget of that plan is $3.9 billion US dollars. All of that has not been received yet. That's the appeal. But this is one area of support. Then there are also recovery types of support, like those discussed at the Ukraine Recovery Conference in London recently. So what is important, because the needs are so huge, they're so far wide-reaching, that you have that there is support both from the humanitarian actors, from early recovery actors, from private sector actors, etc., so that everyone can contribute to people's ability to return, recover, rebuild their homes and lives when they like to do so.
Пані Кароліна, ще одне.
Ms. Karolina, yet another question regarding the survey. Have you seen any difference in responses between the internally displaced persons and the refugees abroad? Is there any difference? Thank you.
Thanks. There is some difference, not huge difference. For example, refugees say that 90% of them give importance to having access to basic services, livelihoods, and housing in the place of origin, while this is 85% among IDPs. I think in general, for those who are internally displaced, its safety and security is seen as a bigger obstacle to return than slightly bigger obstacle compared to those who are abroad as refugees. And this is because among the IDPs, there is a higher percentage of people who originate from the frontline areas. Lugansk, Donetsk, Zaporizhia, the oblasts that are directly targeted by the Russian hostilities in those frontline, while among those who are abroad, there are more who are from areas that are less directly affected. We also see that among the refugees, 74%, for example, rank access to stable accommodation, housing as a key priority, while this is 56% among those who are internally displaced. So there is some differences. It also depends a bit on where people come from. In the study, you will be able to check, for example, how the ranking between security, access to housing, access to jobs, services differ between different oblasts of origin. So that, you can see some differences, but overall quite similar.
Пані Кароліна, ще одне питання, тож де безпосередньо?
Ms. Karolina, another question. Where can we check for your survey? Where can we find it for those who want to get familiarized with it in detail? Thank you.
So it's available on UNHCR's website. We have a website for Ukraine where the survey is published, but we are also happy to send it out to the different media networks, and we can do that maybe in follow-up with our colleagues from Ukraine Forum after this session.
Я хочу вам подякувати.
I would like to thank you for this broadcast, because obviously we all understand that for us as the state of Ukraine, one of the biggest issues is the issue of return of our people, bringing them back, and we want to thank you for getting involved in this process, and we want to thank you for your support, thank you for your systemic aid, thank you for this broadcast, and we continue our broadcast. I want to remind you that we're preparing our schedule for tomorrow. Please stay tuned, follow our announcements. Let's continue working for our victory, and glory to Ukraine.